So first of all, in our function, notice that we're setting search phrase to be empty as a default. So we don't necessarily have to pass the search phrase variable to this function in order for it to run without an error. Our items, again, includes an item for each person, and then each person is an array itself that includes a key value pair that has data about that person, including their favorite band and their shoe size. So first of all, we're checking to make sure that there's actually some items in the array, because if there's not, we want to let them know that the actual data is empty. And so we'll display some text that says so. In this next section, we're going to generate the heading, and we do so by looping through the individual pieces of the first item in the items array, which again is the person. And so as it loops through here, it will pull out headings like shoe size and favorite band. And for each one, it will generate a table heading tag with the name of the heading. Finally, we'll go ahead and wrap a table row around that table heading that we've generated. So far, all of this is the same as our previous example. In this next step, what we're going to do is loop through each person or each item in the items array. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down so we can see all of this code. So if you wanted to make this a little cleaner, you could remove all of these comments here, and you see that our code is about 10 lines long here. So first of all, we have our ternary operator, which we explored earlier. So the method that we're going to use here is that we're going to loop through each item in each person array and find out if there's a match between the text that the user inputted into the form and that particular item. So it will loop through the favorite band, it will loop through their name, it will loop through the year that they were born, and so on. If there's a match of any one of those items, then we want to display the whole row. And if the search phrase is empty, that is, the form doesn't have anything in it, then we want to just automatically display every entry. So we're going to use this search match variable in order to determine whether there has been a match or not. So this variable will tell us whether we're going to add it or not. So if there's no search phrase, we want to automatically set this to true without having to go through each item in the person array. So in this ternary operator, we're checking to see if the search phrase doesn't equal empty, in which case we want to set the search match to false. So what we're saying here is we are doing a search and we're assuming that there's not a match yet. But if the search phrase is empty, then we want to set search match to true, because we'll always display an entry if there is no search phrase at all. Now we're going to be constructing some HTML as we go through here for the individual row that's going to display. So we're going to set the row to be empty at first. So now just to be clear, we're in a for each loop, so this is the first time that we're running through the for each loop. If we want to see the data that we're working with, we can just jump back to the browser and clear out our search phrase here, and then click search to display each item. So right now we're looking at George's data. Okay, let's go ahead and jump back to the code. So we're going to loop through each item in the array that makes up the individual person array, which is now called item array. And all we're checking against is the value of it, not the label. So for this for each loop, we can simply loop through and pull out the value using the as keyword and then a variable, which we're calling value. We're going to check here to see if there's a search match yet. Now again, search match will be true if the search phrase is empty. So if this is true, which it's not, it would skip over this logic. Now it's a good idea in your code to skip over any logic you can. So in this example, if we don't have a search phrase, this logic will be skipped every time we loop through each item in the array. That doesn't make a huge difference if we only have 3 people in our array, but if we have 1,000 or 1,000,000 people in our array, it can make a huge difference to skip a few lines of code. Okay, so for now, we don't have a search match for this row for George. So we're going to use a function called strstr, which will check for the position of one string inside of another string. So it's going to check the search phrase, which in this case is beach, against the value, which right now is George, because it's the first item in the person array. If there's a match, which there isn't, then it'll set search match to true, and it will display this row. But now we're going to follow this loop, and then we're going to start constructing our row of data by wrapping around table cell tags around the value. So now we'll have a table cell that says George. Now we're going to jump back to this for each loop. So we've gone through the first item, which is George, and if we go back to our browser, we can see the full data. The next item is going to be birth year, the next is favorite band, and then shoe size. And we're not going to hit a match on the word beach for any of those. So if we go back to our code, we'll see that for each will run through once, twice, 3 times, and then 4 times, and we have the full row constructed, but there is no search match. So this check here to see if search match equals true, which we can do in a shorter way by just passing the variable search match. So instead of writing search match and then the 2 equal signs and then true, we can simply write search match because search match is either going to be true or false, which is what an if statement checks for. If it's true, it'll add it to the table body. It's not going to be for George, and so this is going to be skipped, and we're going to jump back up to this for each loop where we go to the next individual. So if we go back to the browser, we'll see that the next individual is Sally, and Sally has a birth year of 1975, favorite band of Coldplay, and shoe size of 8, none of which match the word beach. So as we go through the code, I'm going to go back to the editor here. We're going to start with a search match of false because there is a search phrase, it's beach again. Then we're going to loop through each attribute of the person and check to see if beach is inside of that value. We're checking to see if it's against Sally, against her birth year, her favorite band. None of these will result in true, so this line here will never run. So by the time we get to this point, search match is still going to equal false, and we're not actually going to add anything to this table body variable. This is going to be the end of this for each loop, and then we're going to jump back to the beginning of this for each loop one more time. Now if we go back to the browser, we'll see that this third item is Deepak, and his favorite band is Beach Boys, so this will actually be a match. Let's go ahead and take a look at what happens in the code when this occurs. So we're at this for each loop. We begin the search match as being false because there is a search phrase, and then we're going to loop through each item in the array. The first item is Deepak, which is not going to be a match, so when we do this str function, it's not going to trigger search match to be true. And so we'll jump back to this for each loop, and we'll go through again, and then the third time, this value here in the item array will be Beach Boys. And so when we run this str, it's going to result as true, which will cause this line to run, which will set search match to true. And so when we hop out of this for each loop, we have this row of HTML data already constructed. And the difference is that this time search match is true, so this if statement will actually run, and this code in here will get added to the table body. So we're simply adding a table row tag around this row that we constructed, which is just a set of these table cells that includes data about that individual, Deepak. Finally, once we've run through this for each loop 3 times, we're going to generate the output. So we're just going to take a table tag and wrap it around the table heading and the table body, and then return that output to display. Now if we roll down to the rest of our code here, we're using output as a table here, and we're printing it. So when that output gets returned, it just gets printed straight to the browser. Finally, our form will be constructed again, but this time, for the search phrase, we're actually going to have a value for the search phrase variable. Remember how we used a ternary operator here to check to see whether that phrase existed, and if so, we set the search phrase variable to that posted value. And so we're going to print that out here. So every time the user submits the form, it will retain their last search in that input. Okay, let's go ahead and see this in action one more time now that you know how it works. So we're going to go ahead and type in beach here in the search phrase, and I'm going to click search, and sure enough, it just shows Deepak. If we typed in the number 10 and clicked search, you'd see we have 2 matches here because we have 2 people that have a shoe size of 10.